I think we're starting to see films that, especially as the video foundational models and application layers get, even more powerful, and it's kind of scary how
Yeah.
how how good they're getting so quickly. But
Yeah.
I think, maybe full feature length films are, a little farther out,
Little further
but
away, yeah.
but for marketing use cases, for
Mm.
trailers, for music videos, I think it's already here.
Yeah.
And I think the tide is coming, right? AI
Yeah.
is going to come no matter if you like it or not. So my perspective is, if you're against it, uh, be part of the conversation. Be able to be one of those voices who can determine how it's used and how these tools develop, so that, it's people like us who are, not left behind. I've had friends who are on the SAG and WGA
Mm.
Hollywood strikes of last December, and of course I don't want to see them, out of work or unemployed. And I think that they're going to be able to make amazing stories. But I think that one of the key problems is, a lot of these companies, there's a lot of, BS floating around where
Yeah.
they say, oh, jobs are going to change, new careers are going to be created, but they're not providing those tangible solutions for people to
Mm.
actually catch up. Let's not be naive in terms of thinking, VFX roles, storyboarding, storyboard artist roles, they're going to be impacted. But how can those people use these tools to
Mm.
stay relevant, to stay hireable? I think their background, their years of experience and knowledge are going to set them up and support them in so many great ways. For example, you were talking about the camera angles of
Yeah.
knowing, oh, is this a low angle shot, or a 35 millimeter lens, or a
Yeah.
zoom
Yeah.
thing. Having that vocabulary, being able to prompt in such a way that leverages your background, that's how you really kind of get to that next step. And it's only because of having that previous experience that you're able to kind of key into
Yeah.
those points.
You raised a very important point. In fact, that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you in terms of how today marketing, sales, companies, and businesses across the globe, they're using AI. I mean, we're seeing consumer brands like Coca-Cola, Gucci, and even a lot of these B2B teams that start using these synthetic video stories for cold outreaches and sales calls and demos, right? Uh, what's your take on what's happening now with the adoption of AI? And what are some challenges do you foresee, especially from, all of this leads to monetizing AI video in some sense, right? So what is this angle towards AI filmmaking being monetized and used by all of these brands across?
So for, the usage of it, mainly right now, it's in previs or pre-visualization. So
Yeah.
making your pitch deck, making your character sheets or your storyboards. So it's not being used. I mean, in those cases you mentioned, it's being used in production, but it's mainly
Very
kind
limited,
of
yeah,
getting the
getting there.
idea of it. And I think that's more um for these brands, right? They're testing the waters. It's still
Mm.
very tentative. The legal and IP and copyright, there isn't a clear
Yeah.
decision. There isn't a clear decision there, and there probably won't be for a while. And so a lot of these creative agencies, they're of course they have their own R&D that they're doing, and they're ready to flip the switch. For example, Paramount Pictures
Mm.
has, a lot of great, research, but they're not putting it into films because of the backlash that they'll get,
Right.
that the, potential for liability. But I think it's coming soon. I think some of the foundational models,
Mm.
right? The risk is going to be put on them versus on the client or the end user. Of course, the
Mm.
the companies are going to, say they have their commercial license or not.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be just so many of these films, it's going to be way too hard to litigate. And at a certain point, it'll just become so commonplace. My hope is that you see these films, right? They have $250 million budgets, crazy,
Yeah.
right? And they're total flops. They're like terrible films. But what would happen if you took that $250 million, you gave, you know, 500 people $500,000, like that would be, and
So many
I think,
possibilities.
and I think they could make some really amazing films if they're getting paid fairly, if they're getting to showcase their idea, that they've always wanted
Yeah.
to create. And I think the tools are powerful enough where even if they can't get 100% of what they envisioned for it, maybe they can get 85, 90% of the way there. And I think
Mhm.
that'll still be truly amazing.